JB here. Hope everyone's doing an outstanding Thursday, July 31st, 9:02 a.m. on this last trading session of July. Talk really quick about the market, some names I'm looking at, and go from there. S&P up 2.5% in July, NASDAQ up 3.7%, Dow slightly in the green, only because of some like United Healthcare and some other names weighing, but a pretty remarkable month. They always say sell in May and go away, and that hasn't been the case so far. At some point, it will happen, right? Now, I've been a little cautious this week. I still am somewhat cautious, but you have to take a look at yesterday, right? So at 2 o'clock, you had the Fed meeting, and actually another quiet move right after the Fed statement came out. Two dissenters. I don't think that was a big deal. But then at 2:30, you kind of saw the market starting to peel back a little bit, and I think most of it is that his Fed Chair Powell's tone just remains kind of like steadfast, like, oh, wait and see, wait and see. Uh, and it's almost like you take the same comments he makes every meeting for the last couple of meetings and just copy and paste it, right? Uh, you hope there would be like a little more dovish spin, and then he starts saying, "Oh well, we still think that inflation is going to start showing up in tariffs going to start showing up in inflation," and so you saw some of that pull. Even with that, not a huge Fed day move, but we did break under 633 on the SPY, which was my spot to get the hedges. So I was staring at service now. I almost grabbed some. I don't know if I had seven. Was it 930s? I think I was looking at those, and thankfully passed on those, and then just a monster earnings after the close, right? So SPY closed back over 633, and then you had Meta, Microsoft, amongst many other names that reported after the close yesterday. Just monster, especially Meta, right? So you take a look at Meta and some of the concerns, especially at this last year, is when this AI hype was really kicking into high gear. All these mega cap names were a surprising. I wouldn't know if it was surprising, but posting these huge capex spends in regards to data centers and things of that nature, billions, right? To 20 billion, 50 billion, 75 billion. And you had some concerns there, but now it's like this quarter was the first that you really see that maybe it's starting to reap the benefits of this. And you look at Meta, it's first like a huge margin growth, right? Their margin rate increased despite the huge capex spend. So and then they probably have more levers to pull. Who knows? I wish I had more conviction on those names going into yesterday. But anyway, needless to say, so that's up nearly 11%. Let's see, I didn't even pull up the recent quote. And then Microsoft, great numbers too. Their cloud, Azure, whatever, great numbers too. And then on the flip side, right, if I had conviction in that name, MDB, it's like another one of those weeks where I could have at the start of when it was in $200, just went and get further out strikes. But that's how it goes. But well, we'll see how things play out here today. We had PCE data a tad higher than expected this morning. Jobless claims a little lower than expected, so maybe that cancels them out. And then after the close, say Apple, Amazon, some other names. Apple and Amazon will be a little more insight into the tariff situation, right? You already had that negative Wall Street Journal report saying Amazon, despite saying they weren't raising prices from tariffs, they did, surveys on their sites and able to see price increases, not only in names that should be tariff impacted, but names that aren't, right? So using it as an excuse to raise prices. I mean, I guess they call that price gouging, but they're Amazon. So you spin it any way they want, right? So if you're a consumer and the price goes up, you just don't buy it, right? You don't buy another thing of chairs or whatever the item might be, and then you let hopefully supply demand make the pricing accurate as opposed to the retailer forcing the price on the consumer. Uh, but anyway, so overall markets, I still have 621 to 626 to 640 on the SPY. I really hate gaps here. We'll see what happens. 640 on the SPY. If we reverse down, I think it was 634.46 was the close yesterday. I'll be looking maybe for some hedges there. On the flip side, if we can hold the gains here, Apple and Amazon after the close today kind of ease some concerns, and then probably some all-time highs into the weekend. Still, I'm still somewhat cautious. Doesn't mean I have my bear suit on or I don't have, don't think the market hit higher. I don't know, and you take a look and, the small caps, and they were actually, the IWM was under 220 earlier this morning. So we'll be watching that stuff. All right, so now just quick on that. That's overall marks. Trying to think of some of the things. And if you take a look at probability of the Fed cutting rates, it actually the probability for the Fed to cut rates in September went down. So it's now 6% probability that the market's pricing that the Fed's not going to cut rates again in September, and that's in 47 days. So the next Fed meeting's in September, and you have the data for July, which will be out in August, and August, which will be out in September, all that inflation data, jobs data, and all that is going to be out before the next Fed meeting. So you have pretty much 2 cycles of data that the Fed's going to have to parse for the Fed meeting on September. I think it's like September 16th, somewhere in there. So there's so much time between them. It's if you remember last year at this into the Fed meeting in September, it was a similar situation, long amount of time in between the Fed meetings, and they did a jumbo rate cut at the September Fed meeting. So who knows if that's on the table? I keep talking about Jackson Hole. I'm sure you're going to hear more rumblings of that because that's typically when Fed chairs make policy statements, right? That's when they, instead of saying the same old, maybe he's going to come out and say some other things. So got to leave that open on the table. All right, so that's overall markets. U.S. dollar yields didn't do too much yesterday, although U.S. dollar's having a great week. And now just some individual names. So, well, today's the day for Roku. You had disappointing that Tuesday. Again, I don't know if it was Spotify. I don't know. What's disappointing is you have some decent earnings after close, and Roku, I mean, it is green today in the pre-market, but I would think it would be up more. But unfortunately, I don't want to be in a spot where I close the August 15 calls out for a loss, and then it has the monster rally that I've been waiting for. So I'm going to hold those into the close. Just the Netflix earnings, all the thing that's going on with content and the ad space, and the fact that it was $104 stock after its last earnings that sold off, really had no catalyst, no update from the company that was negative. So you have to think it trades into the hundreds and higher after its earnings. So that's the thought process there. I'll continue to hold those. On the flip side here, Fubo was one of my favorite names back in the day. I used to love the story, right? Because it's YouTube TV and all these streaming services. Fubo was kind of like one of those names that people didn't really know about, right? And if you take a look at people, a bigger story a couple of years ago, the cutting the cord and doing a la carte services, Fubo was one of those names that people didn't know about. And the stock, I think it was 20, 30, $40. And then you look at the way people consume content, especially on the sports side, the gambling, doing, odds, intra game odds, intra minute odds, and Fubo is going to kind of try to be the forefront of that. Just a great story. And then so kind of got destroyed. They had cost issues, losing money, still adding subscribers, and then you had Hulu Disney, right? So Hulu has their own Hulu Live service, and then they went and Disney already had a stake in Fubo. I'm trying to think how much. So they just went and just huge stake now, and the stock all the way up to 645 at the start of the year, and then it hasn't got back to that level. And then they just announced preliminary guidance above expectations, user ads above expectations 2 days ago, and the stock, it looks like maybe this could be one of those names that does a meme type move, but with sticking power, right? So I was looking on Tuesday after they reported that preliminary guidance, and I was like, oh, September 5s or October's look interesting. And then it sold off, broke back under $4. Then yesterday, you had the Wedbush and Needham analysts coming out with buy ratings. Wedbush all the way up to like $6. So I'm like, maybe this is an opportunity here to add some spec lotto. So when I say spec lotto, it's $4.40 stock. So to me, if it gets to $6 by September, some of the calls that are out of the money might pay good. So don't be surprised I add some spec lottos today if it can hold its gains. Maybe I'll wait till 10:30 or so for the dust to settle. So that's Fubo. After the close yesterday was Dexcom. So amidst all kind of my caution with TTD and Roku selling off on Tuesday, I went and closed my Dexcom calls for small gain. They had earnings, so my thought process was I was either going to lock them in for profits, roll it out to the August 15th, or just wait and see. Sure enough, after the close yesterday, it reports a strong beat and raise. They announced the CEO succession, so the CEO is going to be COO is coming on to be a CEO, and I don't know if that was the news that sold it off a little bit, but it hit 93 in the after hours. I'm like, oh man, I should have. At first I'm like, I'm going to be kicking myself, and now it's down here at $86. So could be a bounce play. You have analysts out this morning raising their price targets, so I'll be watching. Maybe a move into the low 90s if I can find some decent risk reward strikes. That's Dexcom. And then some other names, MDB, I was talking about it earlier. I was saying at the end of last week when I got those lottos and those paid off that I would continue to look for opportunities to play for a move to 260. Sure enough, it's gapping 244. It's up at 251 here in the pre-market. I was looking, the 260s are still kind of expensive on a risk-reward basis, but 2 days left to expiration. Maybe those premiums come out into the mid-morning, so don't be surprised I had some lottos there on MDB. And also that's on the heels of Microsoft's cloud news. After the close today, you have AWS from Amazon, so that could be another, I guess, bid that could be put into MDB if that they show great stuff there. Now, not much to add here on VKTX, up another 2.4%. Data's out, tick-tock, any day now. And then last but not least, CDLX and Edit. So still holding, CDLX freebie August strikes with some profits. I still have the Octobers. They report earnings next week. Yeah, I hope it wasn't the meme craze that caused this to get. I mean, it's still over the levels that it started its run on. Hopefully, it can find some support here and then get going. Same with Edit. And I think that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.